Shwmai, Lee eto yn Mainori Llancaiach Fawr. Hello, Lee here again at Llancaiach Fawr Manor House. Now, in this short series of videos that we're making, we're giving you an idea of what goes on behind the scenes. Obviously, when people come into the house, they see us in costume, they're given a flavour of the 17th century, everything that they see, everything that they can touch. We like it to be as authentic as is possible to the period 1645, right in the middle of the Civil War. And to maintain that historical accuracy takes a fair bit of work behind the scenes. Now, we've shown you how we make the ink to write the documents. We've shown you how we bind the books that are on the shelf upstairs in the office. But there are also other little things that go on. For instance, in our study, which also doubles up as the armoury, we have these. Now, this is a replica of a 16-bore smooth-barrelled matchlock musket. During the Civil War, this would have been almost at the cutting edge of handheld weaponry. And these weapons, as I'm sure most of you will know, would fire balls of lead. Now, these balls of lead are not particularly common today, and so we often are asked by people where we get them from. And the answer is that we make them. So put yourself in the position of a Civil War soldier. After your day's march, you've set your encampment, the fire has been lit, you've filled your belly with whatever rations you've allowed yourself, and you might think that that would be the end of the day. Sit round passing a jug of wine or cider or beer. But that's not the case. Work would often continue, and it would continue in many forms, repairing of clothes and pieces of kit, but also in the casting of musket balls. Now, they would have access to large molds that would cast multiple balls at a time, but many soldiers would carry these things. Individual musket ball molds. Now, this one is a 16 bore, specific to the gun that I showed you, and you would also have one of these, if you were lucky enough, a crucible in which to melt your lead. Now, lead can be mined in Britain, but as you can imagine, in times of war, when literally millions of musket balls are needed, lead was in short supply, and so churches were in danger. There are many stories of marauding regiments who would tear the roofs off churches to get to the lead, and there are even stories of mausoleums being broken open and the lead coffins being taken out, hacked up and melted down in order to cast musket balls. That was the rarity of lead at the time. But fortunately, we don't have to tear off any church roofs, take down any guttering or remove any coffins from a mausoleum. We have a small amount of lead. So I'm going to show you exactly how easy it is to make these musket balls. So we'll take our crucible and we'll just set that into the fire and then drop our lead straight in. Now, lead has a relatively low melting point. It won't take long then before this becomes a nice silvery colour molten liquid. Now, the lead has only been sat in the fire for about 2 minutes, but as you can see, it's already melted. It really doesn't take long for lead to melt down when it's sat on a bed of embers. Now, even though lead melts at a temperature relatively low compared to other metals, it is still incredibly hot. If you get it on you, it can cause serious injury. It's one of the reasons we don't do this in front of the public. So, safety first. Before we start handling this small amount of molten lead, first and foremost, we've got our eye protection, and secondly, these pair of heavy-duty welder's gloves. They actually pass quite nicely for sort of cheapish 17th century gloves. So we'll get kitted up and then we'll show you how we cast these musket balls. Now with our mould pre-warmed and the lead good and molten, we can start casting musket balls. There, and it's as quick as that. As you can see, there's quite a bit of waste matter around the top. This is known as the sprue, but fortunately these moulds also have right here a cutter, and so we place our musket ball between the jaws and we can cut the sprue off, preferably without dropping it. So there is our musket ball. Now we drop that in some water to cool it off and we can take a look. So there we have it. A relatively simple job, but a process that very, very few people get to see these days. The closest people get these days is probably anglers casting their own weights. It's a similar process, but 3 people working in unison, sat around a campfire, casting musket balls would certainly be able to make several hundred in an evening. If they were using one of the multiple moulds, then they could probably create a couple of thousand. Certainly enough to be getting on with. Now another thing that we're often asked throughout the course of our days here at Llancaich Fawr is, how do we manage to light things? How do we light the fires? How do we light candles? Small children often have some understanding that if you can sort of rub sticks together, you make fire. We quite often are asked if that's the way we do it. We don't. We have a far more interesting way of doing it. Let's take a look. Now, if you wandered into any house in the 17th century, 18th, 19th, and even in some parts into the 20th century in Britain, then you wouldn't have had to look far until you found one of these, a tinderbox. Everyone would have had one near to the fireplace. Many people carried one with them, and it was a simple way of getting a fire lit quickly. Now, they have 4 main inserts. First of all, you have this stuff. This is char cloth. Now, char cloth can be cotton or linen that is baked. It's made in the same way that charcoal's made. It's burnt with the absence of the air, but it wouldn't turn to ash. The result is char cloth. Very, very, very flammable. The second are these. These are known as splints. Now, these are small pieces of wood with a sulfur tip. If you heat it, it liquefies. You can dip a piece of wood in, and then as it cools, it sets. More about those in a moment. Next in the box, you have this, flint. It's a common stone. You can find it in most areas. It's exceptionally hard, and when used in conjunction with one of these, a steel, striking a steel against the flint will cause a spark. And those are the 4 things you need to light a candle. If you light a candle, then that means that there's a flame in your house. You can light other candles from it. You can light your fires from it. So you only really should need to do this once every day. So let's have a look how it's done. So firstly, we need to take our char cloth, and it's always best to fold it quite thickly and then so just burr the edges so you've got a few fibres there. Then place it onto the edge of your flint and you take your piece of steel. Now with that you can spark. You might be able to see there that it's caught a few other sparks and is creating an ember. And all we need to do now is take our sulfur splint and hold it onto the char cloth, give it a gentle blow, and there we have our flame. And as I say, you can then light a candle, and that candle then can be used to create every flame that you need in your house that day. So there we have it, 2 very common queries that we often get from people here at Llancairchfawr on an almost daily basis. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do give us a comment on whichever platform you find this. We always enjoy reading your comments. And if there's anything that you would like to have us explain or demonstrate, please do mention it in those comments. Please keep watching, stay safe. Until next time, hwyl fawr.